topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in again today. I'm Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to Winning Business Radio, now Winning Business TV on W4CY.com, streaming live on Facebook at Winning Business Radio, as well as on YouTube and lots of other places. The mission of this show, as regular viewers know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, to learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged and certainly to be inspired by the successes of others. But, virtually every successful person I've ever had a chance to talk to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So listen, while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I always say I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. Today, my guest is Al Inglesi, commercial real estate banker and entrepreneur. Here's his bio. Al Inglesi, vice president and business banker at Eastern Bank, has been in banking for over 17 years. His main focus remains providing commercial real estate mortgages, including multifamily, churches, commercial buildings in many industries, retail, and with a specialty in SBA 504 loans with up to 90% financing. Eastern Bank is the number one SBA lender in New England for over 13 years in a row, as a matter of fact. Al has a rich entrepreneurial background. In 1994, he founded Beantown Bagel and owned a TCBY franchise, a yogurt franchise prior to that. Al holds a bachelor in business management from Bridgewater State University. He lives in Franklin, Mass. with his wife, Patty. Al has a son, Drew, a daughter, Lexi, and two stepdaughters, Michaela and Colleen. Al and Patty have two Yorkies, JJ and Bella. He's a diehard Pats fan, New England Patriots fan, and a longtime season ticket holder. And he and Patty love to vacation in Aruba. Al, welcome to Winning Business Radio.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Let's start with the best part. Tell us about Patty.
Okay, so my wife is a psychologist. She works for Fallon Health, and we're actually down the Cape today. We've been spending a lot more time down our Cape house than in Franklin due to the sort of the pandemic and about being able to do a lot more things remotely. We live in Franklin. We have a second home down the Cape that we've been spending a lot more time at the last couple of years, and she's pretty much remote. She's been going in now, starting to go in one day a week. She's a big runner. She loves running the beaches down every morning. She runs. She leaves the house at 6:30 and runs, between 5 and 7 miles every morning on the beaches down here.
Fantastic. Love it. Even in the cold?
Yeah.
I run in the winters. As long as you're dressed for it, no big deal.
Yeah, and she loves the ocean, so she loves running to the beach.
That's awesome. Yeah. So tell us about Drew and Lexi.
Okay. Drew works for Northwestern Mutual. He went to Colby Sawyer. He was a baseball player, played 4 years in college. That's his love. And he's been working for Northwestern Mutual the last 3 or 4 years since he graduated from college. He lives in Stoughton. He bought a house in Stoughton. And my youngest one, Lexi, is in a management program up at UNH, the business program. She'll be graduating in a couple months. She's will probably waitress down the Cape this summer, make some money. And then she wants to travel abroad for 4 to 6 months, as long as her money takes her. She is the adventurer in the family. Last summer, she volunteered, and she was in Africa at a 5-game safari for 30 days. She's been to Haiti. She's been all over. So in the summers, she, like I said, she worked at a 5-game safari out in Africa, which was just tremendous, seeing the videos every day. And then Michaela was with Children's, and she's in the nursing program up in New Hampshire now. And then Colleen is 24. She's a CPA. She's working for a firm in Boston right now.
Cool.
She's in the audit division. Yeah. So they're all.
So they cover the gamut for sure.
Yeah.
And talk about the dogs for a sec.
I'll get JJ and Boo Boo, 2 Yorkies. JJ is the Yorkie on steroids. He's about 14, 15 pounds.
Yeah.
He was born in a farm in St. Louis. When we got him, we thought he was going to be like 5 or 6 pounds like Bella. We call her Boo Boo.
Yeah.
He was 11 years old, but JJ's a little bit more. He's a big boy for a Yorkie. He loves howling. He hears the coyotes at night, and we can just tell when he hears the coyotes. He just starts howling with them, and we let him out in our top deck, and he just goes to town with them. He's a big boy for a Yorkie.
That's funny. All right, tell us a bit about your background. Where'd you grow up?
Yep. So I grew up in Milford. I'm from
Milford, Massachusetts, for those listening.
Milford, Mass. Yeah, it's a big baseball town. My dad was president of baseball in Milford for 57 years. My dad's life and blood was baseball. In fact, I can remember in the late 60s, early 70s, one of his friends owned a lot of property, gave it to my dad, for the town to use for the baseball fields. And my dad brought in the military on the weekends, the National Guard, and they surfed and they turfed the fields and laid down the groundwork. And that's still Inglesi Field in Milford.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I thought it had his name on it.
In Inglesi Field in Milford. And my dad, till the day he died, probably a couple months before him, was still attending meetings at 86 years old. So he was one of the big, former started the program in Milford. And my mom was always Mrs. Baseball. Our house was filled. Our basement, growing up as a kid, was filled with bats and balls and bags and everything. And the coaches would come over, whether it was a farm league, little league, or Babe Ruth would come over. Started the spring and grab their equipment bags. So our house was always, filled with baseball stuff.
And you did some coaching, some softball coaching yourself.
Yeah, right? I coached Lexi was a player going up through the systems. And then we used to, travel all across New England, up in Saratoga and all over the place, New Jersey, in softball tournaments. And as I mentioned, Drew played all in high school and ever since he was 3 years old, I think, and then in college also. So big sports background, and Michaela and Colleen both played high school soccer. So and then as you mentioned earlier, we're big Pats fans. We're looking really forward to the schedule coming out in a couple of weeks because we have 3 away games that we'll go to, which will be the Arizona game, the Miami game, and the Las Vegas game. They'll be playing in Vegas next year.
They just released Kyle Van Noy this morning. Yeah,
I heard that. Heard that yesterday. Yeah, and then see what they'll do. Yeah, today's the big.
Hopefully they go younger. I mean, I love the guy, but I hope they go younger and faster. That's what they're trying to do.
There's a lot of talk of them drafting maybe this kid Lloyd, one of the linebackers, or the other kid I think from Georgia. Yeah.
So what drew you to a career in business management, or at least a degree in business management?
So I got in after college. I had a few smaller, shorter jobs, and one was working with Prudential. I got involved in the TCBY stock in the late 80s. And back then it's called the country's best yogurt. They were out of Arkansas, and they were just starting to pop up. It sounds like the yogurt
used to see them around.
They come every 30 years. You have, the new yoga chains that came out 4 or 5 years ago, and then they kind of go away, and they come every 30 years. And we were involved in that, my brother and myself. We had a couple locations. And then
go back to the stocks. You saw the stocks performing.
Yes. And that's what got us involved.
Yeah.
That's what got me involved in the stock. And then we learned more about it, saw one open up, went in, bought the franchise, opened one up in South Weymouth.
Did you finance that? Did you put cash in plus financing? How did that work?
A little of every little home equity.
Yep.
They always say that when you're doing a startup, the best way to borrow money, the first 7 steps are, your own money, your brother, your sister, your mother, your aunt, your uncle, and your family relatives. Those are the top 7 people you go to first because banks don't typically want to hear it. So anyway, we had the TCBY for about 3 years, and it got to be too seasonal because they were in a lot of warm weather climates, and they were doing fine year round. But our winters here aren't conducive to, there were too many $200 days in January and February and March. So we, at that point, stopped the franchise and then switched it over. I had a couple of friends who had bakeries, bagel shops. So I learned, I hired an entrepreneur, Dan Friedman from Friedman and Green Bakeries, who's, a well-known baker, and hired him and then learned how to do bagels. And then the business sort of exploded in the early to mid 90s. And we opened up Beantown Bagel and Muffin Company. And that went on till about 2006.
So tell me who your customers were.
Customers were.
It was it was up and down Massachusetts into New Hampshire.
We had a retail store, a location.
Okay.
Which was a nice location.
That was in Weymouth?
In Weymouth. Yeah, South Weymouth. And then we had, UMass, Boston, had every hotel, not every hotel, but quite a few hotels in downtown Boston. Restaurants, coffee shops, a lot of golf courses in season when they had tournaments going on. We did bagels, muffins, Danish, cookies, scones, and coffee cakes. So we had about 95 to 100 regular nightly clients. We had the Steamship Authority every night, 365 days a year, going down the Cape at 4 a.m. in Mashpee. So we had a large clientele.
For those that don't know, Steamship Authority goes to Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket.
Yep. And so the business grew, and then in 2001, it took a hit with 9/11 and no one going into the hotels in downtown Boston.
Right.
Those areas, people were staying more at home, so had to kind of reinvent the business. And that's when I started getting into more hospitals, colleges, and high schools, in schools that were still doing lunch programs, more in the burbs. And then in about, we were doing, you name it, Franklin Park Zoo, we had a lot of large accounts, a lot of larger.
So these were individually, dependent on the customer, but they could be individually wrapped for sale, point of sale.
No, we were selling to larger bakeries that were doing bread bakeries around Somerville and Boston. They would buy $4,000 or $5,000 worth of product off us a week. And we would put everything in 6-packs. And then when they would go to these large buildings with cafeterias, they would be bringing in, 6-packs of muffins or Danish or whoopie pies or scones or coffee cakes. Same as the golf courses. Whenever there was a golf outing and you had 185 golfers coming, there would be 5 or 6 dozen bagels, 5 or 6 dozen muffins, a couple of coffee cakes and things like that. So that business went on for, quite a bit till around 2006. And at that point, I had just, the trucks were going out 9:30, 10 o'clock at night till 6, 7 in the morning.
Were they your trucks or were they leased?
Yeah, Beantown Bagel
trucks.
Yeah. And at that point, I just got burnt out.
Yeah. So were you baking? I mean, were others baking? What was your role?
In every once in a while baking, but I mean, we had plenty of bakers. We had about 22, 23, full-time workers. And it just was a different lifestyle where trucks would break down in the middle of the night or somebody didn't get their order. We were at the Logan Airport every night, the Hilton and stuff. We were doing orders. I mean, it was, we were up New Hampshire to the Cape, to here, to there. And I needed to get a real 9-to-5 job and be able to enjoy things and slow down, because again, I could be up at 3 a.m, driving to the Burlington Marriott or something like that, or it wasn't the best lifestyle. And I was getting, I was in my 40s and I just said things need to change. So we sold the roots, got rid of everything. And then had a sister who worked for TD Bank, and she said, they're looking for people that have a business background, how to read P&L and balance sheets that aren't necessarily your typical banker, but is able to generate business just based on their connection with other entrepreneurs and other people at the back shop.
Let's take our first break right here. We're going to be back in just a couple minutes. Al, we'll talk about TD Bank when we come back. We'll be back with Al Inglesi, Eastern Bank.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Hey everyone, I'm Jimmy Star, the king of cool and your host of the Jimmy Star Show, the entertainment radio show for all you cool and unique people looking to get a behind-the-scenes peek at what's going on in the entertainment industry. Listen in as me and my cool crowd of co-hosts bring you celebrity guests, new music, and the good times in fashion, entertainment, and pop culture. Right, everybody? Right! Tune in live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on W4CY.com.
Hey, this is Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
Hey, this is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
Welcome back with Al Inglesi of Eastern Bank, commercial business real estate broker, banker, Al, and entrepreneur. Al, I got a question before we get to TD Bank. The TCBY and then Beantown Bagel, what would you say is one or two of the most important lessons you took away from that chapter?
I mean, franchises are a little different. Through the TCBY, you're restricted, and as a Massachusetts, as a Northeast business, we weren't able to bring in soups or pastries or muffins, something just similar to a Panera now has. You can go in Panera any day of the week, any time of the year, and have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, more or less. But in back in those days, in the early 90s, we weren't able to sell any products that would really help us in the Northeast. So again, times have changed. It was 30 years ago, but that was the killer. That was the nail in the coffin that kind of did it to that. And then with Beantown Bagel, I think the biggest lesson is you just, one day things could be great. And then the next day, as we're finding out what gas prices now, when 9/11 hit, what hotels thought their occupancy was going to be at 8 and 10%,
right?
And people weren't going to be traveling, and you really never know what the next day takes you. So I guess it's count your blessings every good day you have, and things don't get crazy the next day, because your business could be great, and then all of a sudden the next day, things change.
So there we go to change, right? You started with TD Bank through your sister. Talk about that story.
Yeah. So my sister had mentioned she had worked for TD for a while, and she had mentioned that TD was looking to hire, and I just, I'm not really a banker. I'm not the banker type, and it came out to be
you don't
that,
like suits?
You know what? Right. They're, being able to, as a business owner, and being able to read P&L and balance sheets, and being able to get to the decision maker was something that I would thrive at. And so I went to TD, worked there for about a year and a half. And I had a lot to do with the garden. I had the ice at the Boston Garden on Monday nights once a month, and I would bring in, COIs. We could skating.
Centers of influence, everybody.
Yep.
Keep going.
And started growing my book and my business. And then after about a year and a half, I got a nice offer from Eastern Bank, which is where I've been since 2007. And I was able to do a little more things with Eastern Bank. I was able to grow and do larger loans, whereas in TD there were more layers. And at Eastern, I was able to go from 100,000 all the way to 5 million, as opposed to having different layers in some of the larger organizations. And
TD Bank is a large regional bank, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Maine to pretty much, where do they cover?
They're across the country.
Oh, they are now across the country.
Oh, yeah. Okay. TD is everywhere. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The Toronto Dominion. Yeah. TD Bank North.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at that point in 2007, I jumped over to Eastern, and I've been here, I think April next month will be 15 years at Eastern now. So my main office is in Sharon, but I'm sitting today down the Cape, and I cover a large territory.
So you can bop into any branch that's got a space.
Yeah, and back when I started in 2007, there were only 6 or 7 of us in the business banking world. So back at that point, used to have 10 or 12 branches. So I mean, I was Burlington, Lexington, Chelmsford, Auburndale, Newton, all the way down Dedham. And then as the bank grew and as we hired more workers, it's kind of your area got consolidated. But I've got clients in Lexington and Burley. I mean, clients ever at the Cape. I mean, I pretty much all through Rhode Island, Southern Rhode Island. I just closed a loan for a dental practice down in Narragansett, Rhode Island. I mean, so I'm literally pretty much all over Massachusetts, Southern New Hampshire, and Southern Rhode Island.
All right. Tell people about the SBA 504 loan program.
Yep. So I'm actually have 2 or 3 of them closing this month. So an SBA 504 is, example would be something that is owner occupied 51% or more. So I am doing
and these are real estate loans. This is not.
These are real estate loans.
Right. Commercial property.
I'm writing one up right now on my desk, which is a cafe.
Mm-hmm.
The client is buying the real estate that the cafe sits on and also buying the business. So there's 2 loans there. So the SBA 504 is got to be 51% owner occupied.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is a lot. So you can think of, I'm doing a lumber yard. I just did a dental practice. I'm doing a cafe. I just came from a liquor store, ground up construction liquor store that I was at this morning. So anything that is owner occupied, I am doing a landscaping company that's buying a building, going to be occupying it all. So anything that's 51% more owner occupied qualifies for what they call an SBA 504 program, and that is a 90% financing program. The benefits to that are on the SBA piece. The loan's broken down into 2 pieces, Kevin. It's broken down 50% the bank piece, 40% the SBA piece. That's the 90%. The 10% cash infusion is from our borrower.
Where does that cash need to come from?
It comes from it comes from whether they have a home equity or their 10% into their skin into the game. The bank requires them to have at least they can go into 5% and the owner can hold back 5% also, but they need to have some skin in the game for us to do the deal. And it becomes a 90% financing. But the benefit of the SBA 504 program is the SBA piece, which is the 40% piece. So if you're basing it on $1 million loan, Easter Bank's doing the 50% piece, $500,000. SBA is doing the 40% piece, the $400,000. Customers coming in with the $100,000 at 10%. That SBA piece comes with a tremendous rate, which is averaging about 3.5 fixed for 25 years.
For a commercial
right
loan,
now.
that's
So
incredible.
in the commercial world, which is nothing like residential, there aren't very many loans that go out or are fixed at all, more than 5 years, 10 years tops. So it's very unusual to get a 25-year fixed rate at a great rate. Again, nothing to do with the residential. Commercial is a totally different animal. And that's the benefit of the SBA 504 program. And I think I've been the SBA number one lender throughout the last 8 years for a couple different categories, Granite State and then Seed 1 year, which are the SBA CDCs that the bank joins partners with.
The CDC is a Community Development Corp.
Yep. So we do a lot with them. Like I mentioned, the loan I'm working on right now is with one of my partners. So it's been a great niche to be involved in. A lot of banks don't really do a lot of SBA lending, but Easter Bank has taken that and kind of run with it. We've got our in-house SBA team. We're preferred SBA lender. I think we typically do double the volume of most as far as the numbers. I think we're usually 700 or 800 a year, and most banks are probably 200 or 300. Some banks are less than 10. So we've got a nice little niche, and that's been sort of my play the last 10 years doing those SBA loans.
So who's going to get financed? Who's going to have a challenge being financed? And make sure part of that answer is how people can prepare to be financed.
I would think one of the biggest thing is your credit score, your own personal FICO scores.
Is there a personal guarantee here?
Yeah, we're personal guarantees on these.
Right.
And you're going to want a credit score over 680. So before you even go for financing, you should, if you don't, which you should be now, you should kind of be checking your credit scores to make sure you have that in line. There's no late payments, or if there are, you call up and just say, it's always better to ask for forgiveness by calling a credit card company and say, hey, look, I was traveling or I missed it. It was my mistake. Could you please take it off? And that's the best way to go, to be honest with them, and try to get that clear. There are other things out there, though, Kevin, that, I've dealt with numerous wealthy clients, and, they could be a co-signer on a nephew or a niece or a daughter's son's student loan. And, the child could go abroad for 3 or 4 months and not make the payments, and not telling an aunt or an uncle, which has happened numerous times. or the parent, and not shutting it off for 3 months, and all of a sudden it pulls up as a co-signer as a parent. You're responsible for your kids, and now that shows 3 months later. I mean, that's easy to rectify the bank and tell our credit officials that. But that's one thing. So I would think having your own personal credit in order is probably the first and most important thing to get going.
Are there any ratios within their balance sheet or financials that you look for?
Well, Eastern Bank tends to be a cash flow lending bank. So we're going to lend on properties that, if I'm doing a multifamily, we're not going to lend on a vacant property. We're going to lend on a property that's got 5 tenants in, 4 tenants in, 6 tenants in, that it cash flows, that there's a performer that all banks use, and that performer is $1.25 coming in for every dollar in debt. So it's a performer that banks use, whether it's the real estate or whether it's a business acquisition, that you need to have those numbers, and that gets a deal done.
So 51% owner occupied. Does that apply to that residential property as well?
It does not.
No, sorry, commercial property as well. So the owner does not have to live in that property.
No, it's a commercial property. So if you picture a dental practice and the property, here you go. I just did a really super beautiful pizza shop, large craft beer pizza shop in Lakeville. And I would say about 75% of the square footage of the 10,000 square feet was the restaurant, the pizza shop. So the 2,500 was a dental practice. So long as our pizza shop occupied 51% of that 10,000 square footage, he qualifies for an SBA 504. So you can have other tenants in. You could be a landscape yard that occupies 60%, 70% of the square footage. And then you could have other bays out there that you could rent. Same thing with
storage, construction company, whatever, right?
Yeah, anything. Yep. I've done golf courses, funeral homes, anything that is for profit. So not a church, anything that's for profit, 51% are owner occupied. A bowling alley, a hockey rink, any one of those gas stations.
All right, so go back to churches, because I know I've heard you talk about doing real estate deals for churches. How is that? It's just not an SBA loan. No,
that is a conventional owner-occupied loan, 80% financing. So we tend to do a lot of churches. Got a nice little niche. I probably do 5 to 6 a year.
That's a nonprofit, but they have to show cash flow as well.
They have to show, whether it's tithing or whether it's the income, whether they're renting a space and then they're finally looking to buy their own building.
What if they're getting support from elsewhere, from a denomination or a?
Some are, but most typically are not, because if you were part of a typically a much larger organization, sometimes they have their own financing contingencies that the mother church would have. But most of the ones I do are, it could be Haitian, it could be Brazilian, and they're looking to buy a building for $600,000 or $2 million. They're looking to buy, it just did one that was the Knights of Columbus that they totally renovated. Another was a temple that a Haitian church bought. So those are.
Do any of those have other tenants that provide income?
Some you would see that would. Some of
maybe
the larger churches have a daycare downstairs. Okay. A couple of them do. But the majority of it, and a lot of times that daycare is owned by the church. That's just one of their
separate financials, though.
Typically, yes. So churches are a niche that a lot of banks, no one. God forbid, no one ever wants to foreclose on a church. I mean, that's
pun intended or not? No pun intended.
Yes. So so I have a little niche doing that.
We're going to take our second break, Al. We'll be back in just a couple more minutes with Al Inglesi, commercial real estate banker with Eastern Bank and entrepreneur. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show? Well, W4CY Radio makes dreams come true. You can be a radio personality on the #1 ranked internet radio station in West Palm Beach, Florida. We can be heard in 105 countries and all U.S. states. Promote your business, earn up to $10,000 per month and more. It's all up to you. Have fun and be heard. Call 561-506-4031. That's 561-506-4031. Start your radio show now.
Hey, this is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
Hey, this is Johnny Three Tears from Hollywood Undead, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
I do whatever it takes to make it break through. Anything I'm face to face with, it's true.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We are back with Al Inglesi, commercial real estate banker with Eastern Bank and entrepreneur. Al, I want to get back to some of the prep. What do you see some of the mistakes potential borrowers make that might make it either difficult or prohibitive for them to get financed?
Again, as I mentioned, it's having their credit, their own in-house in order. A lot of times don't get a lot of debt before you go to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you're buying a home or a second home or something, wait till after the acquisition is done on the commercial side to wait. We've seen people do that, where all of a sudden it shows that they've got another $400,000 or $500,000 mortgage that just showed up, and it's a second home, which is going to hurt their personal cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one thing. I guess in another big thing, Kevin, would be to talk to the bank or the business bank or whoever you're dealing with. Talk to them well before the time that you want a pre-approval letter, well before the time that you're actually buying the property. Because if you're a business owner and you're paying rent and stuff and you're looking at another property, you want someone to be able to tell you that you could afford to buy a $700,000 property. You want to waste everybody's time going in, making an offer on it, and then not getting any bank, not having a letter from the bank before you go into it, or having some knowledge that the deal is going to work. Most of my clients now that I deal with, I always tell them, come to me a couple, 3-4 months before you start the process, so I can at least tell you that, hey, look, you can afford $750,000 on a building. You can't afford 1.3 million, but $750,000 to $800,000 is going to work out of loan. So one thing I would say, get your ducks in a row, get your financials, straight, and approach a business banker or whoever you're doing it with, similar to a residential, before you put that offer on that building and go have a lot of that paperwork and done, and know what you need to get across the finish line early.
So are you spending time, or at least some time, with that lender or that borrower's CPA?
Yes, or their bookkeeper. Yeah. They know exactly what I need. Like right now, it's kind of early to get the 2021 business tax returns.
Right.
But I can look at a 2021 P&L and a balance sheet, and I can have them send that over and to see how they've done the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm dealing with the church right now, that I'm telling them that number I mentioned earlier, 750, that based on the numbers and based on the rent they're paying now, that an acquisition of $750,000 is well doable for their congregation. So yeah, it's getting as much financials beforehand so that I don't get involved into a loan that's going to end up with a denial. Right. And I'm not dragging the borrower through all the paperwork, the applications, to do everything, get them set up to fail. So that's the biggest part of my job, is knowing that whenever I send stuff up to credit, that there's a 99% chance, based on something that I maybe would never know, but there's a 99% chance that it's going to come back with an approval.
I don't know if you still see this. I used to see on occasion, and some of our business broker friends would recount stories of where could be a cash business, and we're not providing legal advice, we're not providing financial advice, so we don't have to do those disclaimers. The point being, some of that cash doesn't always make it to the bank.
Yeah, and that's why there's things called hard money lenders out there, Kevin.
So there's some of that money just gets spent right away, or it pays for personal expenses.
For people tell me they've got the deposit right back there, and you walk out back and they've got a safe with cash, and unfortunately, the no documents and all that stuff is long past us, to the point where now if it's on a tax return, and the tax returns need to be verified, that if it's on a tax return, it's legit. So those days of wink wink, those are
the no docs in residential lending, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's cash flows, it's tax returns. If someone was selling a business, and someone was going to buy the business, and someone told them, the seller said, "Hey, I've got 2 books. One book that I report to the IRS, and another." Those days are gone. No one's going to buy it. It just doesn't do yourself a favor.
I mean, you don't even want to be around that one.
No,
professionally, right?
Nope.
What team of advisors should a business have? This is sort of a layup question, but there are some guys that may not be as sophisticated. It's a smaller business; they're growing. Who should they have on their team?
The smaller business that is growing, that sees their CPA once a year, and isn't set up with cookbooks and stuff like that. That was me for a while, where you were so tunnel focused into your own day-to-day operations that you're just in there working 8 hours as a business owner, as opposed to maybe sitting back and kind of seeing the whole total picture of growing the company. So, these smaller businesses should have a CPA that they talk to, maybe quarterly, maybe say, "Here's my numbers, help me out here. Why are my cost of goods so high? Why aren't my numbers jiving?
How can I save some taxes? What other strategies could we employ?" Right.
Yeah. Because it's all about the bottom line. Successful business is going to make a happy family. And you can't just go see your CPA or your bookkeeper or an advisor once a year. It just doesn't work. And so the biggest thing for me would be having some sort of bookkeeping, or to have somebody that comes in that's able to, every Monday comes in, does your payroll, and they hit a
certainly could be outsourced.
Yeah, it can be. Sure, absolutely. Doesn't have to be an inside, especially
as long
for
as
a
the
smaller
function's
business.
Happening.
Yeah, and smaller businesses, can't afford a part-time CFO or stuff like that. So it's just really having a look at your business and making sure the numbers work, and that something isn't higher than normal. Costs aren't exorbitant.
What are some, just for a little fun, what are some of the crazier deals you've done, crazier businesses, or most unusual?
I did a church where most of the congregation, not most of the board members showed up.
Yeah.
And when the loan documents were done, there were 10 or 12 of them chanting and cheering and singing in the conference room, where they were all clapping and cheering.
Yeah.
As a business owner, a lot of the loans that I do are very gratifying.
Yeah.
Especially to a business owner that's opening a restaurant or something that's been their dream, and they've been paying rent. Like the gentleman I was with this morning has been paying exorbitant rent for 15 years, since 2007, and now he's building a beautiful liquor store. So there's a lot of feel-good stories. I have a photographer that I couldn't love this kid anymore, that's opening up a photography studio. And so there's a lot of feel-good stories when you're actually working with someone who's like myself, who was an entrepreneur, single business owner and stuff, and isn't a big conglomerate, and getting them that loan for $700,000. I did a couple of landscapers last year, that, 2 younger guys. So there's a lot of joy that comes in at a closing when people continuously thank you, and call you Santa Claus because you're the money guy. I've done everything, again, from golf courses to churches to a lot of restaurants, landscaping companies, just you name it. But the gratifying part again is coming to a closing and people thinking that they would never see the day where they would be able to afford or be able to buy the property.
And that can change their financial future because now they've got a massive piece of equity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially if they're locking in at a rate and they don't have to worry about the landlord coming to them anymore and saying what they can't do or can do. And, people would be surprised what they're paying for rent that they could buy property. Now, again, you can't buy property in downtown Boston, but if you go out a little bit to the burbs, there's much better deals to be had in some of the suburbs. But yeah, no, I've done pizza shops. I've done, you name it.
So how does that business make its way to you? Where does your business come from? I know you do a lot of
my business comes from COIs. It comes from a lot of brokers. Mm-hmm. It comes from business brokers that are selling businesses. Mm-hmm. So the one I'm working on right now is from someone that we know, a business broker that gave me this deal, introduced me to the client. Mm-hmm. And I was with the client yesterday, finishing up on the paperwork that's in credit now. So a lot of it comes from a lot of my COIs. A lot of it comes from my branches.
Right.
But I would say if you ask me, I did, 85 to 90 loans probably last year. I would say 40 or 50 of them are loans 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Some customers I've done over 15 loans with.
Wow.
That are multifamilies that just keep coming back every 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. One of the closings next week would be the second loan I've done for this client in the last 4 or 5 months. So my clientele is well investors that continually buy and buy and buy. And then the other new ones are new ones. And I tell people all the time, I'm not here to make a killing. I'm here to make a living.
Right.
That most likely I'm going to try to give you the best experience you can in this deal. Mm-hmm. So that 6 months, year, 2 years, that I'm the first phone call you make and saying, Al, I'm looking at another property. And that's sort of been my philosophy all along. I'm not in it for a year or two. I'm going to be here for another 3.5 more years till I retire. So, it's treating customers right, fairly, and then just doing the next deal with them, and that's what I get. My phone rings all the time. Every day there's a deal coming my way.
Do you cultivate the branches? I mean, you don't work at a branch. I mean, you have an office, but
I have an office in the branch,
right? But you're out and about all the time. You cultivate those relationships.
Four branch managers, and I try to be accessible all day, so that if Kevin, if you went into one of the branches and said, "Hey, I'd like to find some information out about a business loan. How do I go? Where do I start?" And you're talking with a branch manager or an assistant branch manager, that they're going to call me and they're going to say, "Hey, Al, do you have a minute? I'm sitting with Mr. So-and-so, and they're looking for a loan. You got 10 minutes to talk to them." And absolutely. And then I will email them or text them after the conversation and say, "Hey, look, great talking to you. This happened yesterday. Customers at a bank, great talking to you. Here's my email. This is what I need. I need your last couple of year business tax returns. I need a rent roll. Kind of tell me the details, the income expenses of the strip plaza they're buying." Mm-hmm. So that's all in the pie too. There's my existing clientele, there's COI clientele, and there's branch clientele that come to me. Yeah.
I want you to go back to something you said fairly quickly. I don't think people caught it. I just want you to describe it because it's kind of cool. When you were with TD, you did this event on the ice.
Yep. So what happened?
Clever ideas. I'm hoping people can steal some of this.
Yeah. So TD was, the Toronto Dominion. It was the TD Garden. They had the naming rights to the garden. So because I worked for TD, I was able to, I don't want to say wine and dine, but I was able to have the ice from 6 to 8 o'clock on Monday nights once a month when the Bruins and Celtics were on the road. And I got to invite 100 people skating, which was great. We got to go in the locker rooms. They opened up I think it was the Will McDonough press little area where they had snacks for the kids.
Cool.
So it would be skating. And then one of the cooler things was I got to invite about 20 to 30 people nightly to games, which were 2 to 3 days a week. And we had a dinner up in Legends. And as you know, in hockey, there are 3 periods. And there were 30 COIs sitting at a table. They didn't know this, but at the bottom of their plate, if they had a number, a 1, 2, or a 3, that meant they got to go down in between the Bruins and the opposing team's bench, there's a little area that has 4 seats and folding chairs. 2 in the front row, 2 in the back row. You would have to cut through. You would have to go through in between the period. You would cut through the first row.
Because they actually moved
open the plexiglass up. 2 people would sit in the front row, and then me and another client would sit in the second row.
Go to the bathroom before they lock you in, right?
Yep. And then 6 inches to your right would be the Bruins skate, and then 2 feet to your left would be the opposing team skate. And that 1 and 2 simply meant you got to sit there the first period, the second period, the third period. And that was always cool, because hearing some of the coaches swear in French, was just outstanding. And some of the rhetoric that the coaches would spiel, at the players you were 6 inches. You were here in the glass, and the player's shoulder would be, yours in the plexiglass. So that was a fun experience for a year and a half. It did get old going to games 2 to 3 times a week, and driving back and forth to Franklin and parking and all that stuff. But it was fun. And TD has a great kids club. They have a TD Boys and Girls Kids Club where we took kids in all the time from different towns, community boys and girls schools to the games. So that was fun. So it was good.
I've been to a bunch of Bruins games, and it's always a riot to watch these 9-year-olds. Even the 7-8-year-olds skate around.
Yeah,
two half ice teams between periods. It's just a lot of fun.
So that was good. And then with Celtics games, we would go in the locker rooms at the halftime. The kids would go in the locker room, and there would be always 4 or 5 assistants in there taping the game.
Yeah.
So it was fun. It was a good year and a half. I love TD. It was nothing. It was a better opportunity for me to leave and grow and go with Eastern Bank.
What are you most proud of at this point in your career?
I would say that there still is not a day that goes by that I don't look forward to certain closings when I really can't believe that some of this thing is coming to fruition.
Yeah.
And getting a bear hug from people that comes in and point across me saying, "You're the man that made this happen."
Yeah.
Give me a bear. That literally just happened a month ago, where it was a big guy came over and gave me the big bear hug and picked me up and said, "We're going to do lunch." And I'd be forever grateful for you. So that's what I'm gratified for, as being able to give people some of their dreams, making them come true. And at the same token, you have to tell them, "Hey, you're not ready yet. You're a year away. You're 2 years away. Your business just can't support this type. It's just not going to work right now.
Right.
You need to get your ducks in a row."
All right, couple more.
Yep.
How'd you become such a big Pats fan?
Well, I grew up in Milford, so Foxborough and the stadium was literally 15, 20 minutes away.
Yep.
Howie Long was 2 years in front of me in high school.
Okay.
So I played football, Pablo Honor, all the way to high school, and my freshman year in college. So, in the past, we're right up the road. So I had, what? There you go. Here's why. I had aunts and uncles that went to the games most Sundays. And back in that day, in the early 70s, that was part of my Christmas present. I would get season tickets. They were $3 a ticket, sitting in the end zone with my relatives when I was 10 and 12 years old.
Wow, that's
so I've always had season tickets since probably the early 70s, off and on. And then I just have had them. I have much better seats now than I had back in the day. And typically, I think last year we missed one home game, and I missed a home game last year because we were down in Tampa. We went to a Brady game. We saw the Brady pay the Bears, so we went down in Tampa that weekend. The Pats had a home game against the Jets, so I missed one home game last year. But otherwise, like I mentioned, next year we have 3 away games on target, and I've been doing that with my son Drew. Ever since he was probably 5 or 6 years old, we would pick an away game. We'd go to Atlanta or go to Dallas, go to one away game a year. We'd go on a Thursday. We'd go to the museum. We'd go to the aquarium, things out in Dallas. So we'd make it a little, where he had to write a paper on term paper because he was missing 2 days of school. But we'd go to, Atlanta where they had the Olympics and everything going on out there. So we would always tie it into a sporting event with the football game with a little bit of history too. So it's just been part of my background, who on my DNA.
All right, 2 more questions. Best game you've seen in person?
Snowball.
Snowball.
Yeah, and I honestly, I take direct responsibility.
That's the Raiders tuck rule.
Yep, I
Right.
take direct responsibility for everybody who was sitting in section 204 on that snowy 30-degree day.
Yeah.
Because I had my headphones on, and Gil Santos was mentioning that a tuck rule, which none of us had any idea, and I was yelling at people, hold on, I don't know what's going on, but they're talking about a tuck rule. Do not leave. Do not leave. And
that was so pivotal, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you watched the Tuck Rule special at Brady's.
I did.
Brady just
I did.
filmed last week with Woodson at his house down in Tampa.
Oh no, I didn't see that one. I saw it. There was another one. Sorry.
Oh, Brady! They just did they had Brady
no, I haven't seen that one yet.
Charles Woodson at his house in Tampa 2 weeks ago. The Tuck Rule. They had an hour special.
Wow.
And they talked about it. And
Woodson's still upset.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just saying what a joke rule, and it didn't happen. And so anyway, I take direct responsibility for that one. And then I think the other one would be, I think in around 08, 09 in Dallas, maybe New Orleans, but the Dallas game where the Patriots beat Romo and Moss was on fire.
Oh yeah,
It was 48 to maybe 20 or 17. It was Moss against T.O., Brady against Romo.
That's right.
And that was in Dallas, and that was great. And then you know what? I did go to Squish the Fish in '85.
Oh, I remember that game.
Ray
Berry.
That was a great game too.
Hey, we have to wrap up. Thank you so much, Al, for being here. It's been a lot of fun. Best way for people to reach out is the email address a.inglesi@easternbank.com. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Kev. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. This is a show about business and business challenges. Listen, if you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Winning Business Radio. Or you can drop me a note. The easiest email address of my many is kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Our company's Winning Incorporated, part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. Thanks to producer and engineer Roxy for another job well done. We'll be back at it next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern when we'll do it all over again. Be sure to join us. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.